Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're on YouTube and you see a little link down there, you can join the actual conversation by just clicking on it and joining us here. If you're here, you're an attendee, and you're looking at all these panelists and thinking that you know more, you might. And we'd love to have you come and try joining us and joining the conversation. So if you'd like to do that, you just have to get here early. We open the doors at 6. Can't promise anything from 6 to 6:40. We're just talking, figuring stuff out. But oftentimes, it's sometimes the most interesting part of the day. So I would recommend trying to come early if you can. But you definitely want to do that if you want to be in the panel. It gives you time to kind of figure out if all your mic and your camera and everything else are working. At 6:40 to 6:42, we're going to put out the Discord link. Discord link is where almost 800 of us keep talking about this stuff between the shows. At 6:42, approximately 6:43, we're going to start the mic checks. Once we've done the mic checks or started the mic checks, we're not going to add anybody else to the panel. So if you want to be in the panel, make sure you're there by 6:40, but come early if it's your first time so that we can make sure that everything's working. At 7 o'clock, we start doing general Q&A, general discussion. And so if you get here at early, the best thing to do is ask questions. You are the producers. More than any other show you'll see ever anywhere, the attendees are the producers. You're driving the conversation through your questions and your votes. So as you vote, if you want to know why did we not spend that much time on it at the bottom of the hour, it's because you didn't vote on it. You didn't push it up. So it's your job to both vote on questions and ask them if they haven't been asked. Think about doing it between every show. Just think about the questions you want, write them down somewhere, and come back here with those questions. So then at the second hour is when we talk about something specific. So Mondays are general wild card. Tuesdays are audio. Wednesdays are camera and video. Thursdays are usually special guests, and Fridays are education as well as Saturdays. Sundays, we just kind of have a general conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about LumaFusion. Terri Morgan is here, and she's going to be sharing what LumaFusion is and how it works and answering your questions. If you have questions about LumaFusion, what you want to do is put Luma : in the question, and we'll remember to save that for the second hour. But we'll get started on that and then move forward with that. So that's kind of how it works. If you want to share what we're doing here, don't use your own link. Your own link will just have lots of people come in as you. Share the link that I just put in Makana. So that's the best link to use to share with other people. Everybody's welcome. And Chris, are you going to manage questions today? Can I throw you into the fire?
Yeah. Throw me in. So
Right.
the first question, good morning, by the way.
Good morning.
The first question comes from Khalid from KSA, and I had to look that up. That's the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Nice.
And Khalid says, has anyone tried an app called Touch Portal? It's a macro multi-action remote control, an alternative to Stream Deck. touch-portal.com.
Jason and then Jeffrey.
I have, and it is fairly legitimate. My main issue was that it couldn't control anything Blackmagic, so I went with Companion instead. But as a platform, it's solid.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So yeah, I before the Stream Deck really came out, I was using the touch panel. What I was using it for was I have a graphics machine, and that graphics machine all hotkey based. So what I would do is bring out the iPad and I'd set up the board, just a regular board setting thing setup. The license actually is on the iPad, not on the machine, by the way. So if you don't have the right device set up for it, it's kind of odd on that, but that might have changed. It's been a while since I've used it, but it does a lot of great things. Just as Jason said, lots of cool hotkey options.
Next question.
Stuart, our own Stuart down there in Australia. By the way, Stuart, is that noise we're hearing tonight rain or just fan noise? I was just curious from the sound check.
As in, the noise floor before appears to be at 4 kilohertz, and it's something I'm going to have to go looking for. I've just killed it with an EQ tonight.
On tonight's Full Course Yellow Zoom meetup for Melbourne 31s in Pitt Lane, plug, we had issues with the Zoom to Facebook connection telling us it was getting 2 streams from Zoom. What is the best way to connect Zoom into Facebook?
It should work. We've actually had more luck getting it to connect. Well, YouTube, it works well. what doesn't work, or what hasn't worked, what has worked with Facebook is us streaming RTMP, using the RTMP output from Zoom, and then just putting the Facebook logins in. And we found that to be more stable than the API. We find it to be less stable with the YouTube API than the YouTube API. So it's easier to stream from Zoom directly using the API connection from Zoom. We have been unsuccessful at getting any stream out of YouTube if we use the RTMP connection, because if we try to schedule an event in Zoom, in YouTube, and then stream it, Zoom is asking for a return URL, which is not necessary, kind of frustrating, and it will lock up, for the scheduled events. So that's the main reason we wanted to use RTMP, was so that we could just schedule events ahead of time inside of the piece, and then just turn it on. That would make a lot of our life easier. But Zoom doesn't handle. At least we've had a lot of trouble with the RTMP with a scheduled event inside of YouTube, where we haven't had that problem inside of Facebook. You can also send it to Restream, and then just send it out of Restream and pass it on. Restream is pretty good at kind of cleaning up all the advantage of Restream is that they're dealing with all these platforms all the time, and they're kind of managing it for all their idiosyncrasies, because thousands of people are using it every day. And so if you're having trouble connecting, the easiest way to get it out is just to put it into Restream, let it clean up the data, and connect to the end host. And it's one of the reasons to use it is you don't have to figure it out. Stuart?
I'm pretty sure that's what Brett Ramsey had as our setup tonight, because it was coming up as custom stream instead of Facebook stream on the Zoom.
And you're having
window.
that problem?
The other thing that I just thought out with what you were answering, is it better to use RTMP or RTSP?
I didn't even know Zoom does RTSP. Does it do RTSP? I think it only does RTMP.
I don't know. I'm just thinking from what I would normally stream with, because one is, let's say, real-time messaging protocol. The other is real-time streaming protocol.
Yeah, I don't know of any platform that takes RTSP, nor any public platform that takes RTSP. RTMP is the only one that I've seen go down that path. The other problem, by the way, that I have to deal with every day with Zoom when we're streaming to YouTube is that I figured it out. When Zoom creates a YouTube event, it should create auto off. So basically, if I lose signal, I'll turn off the event. Zoom doesn't do that. So it's just in the API that they have to do that. And as a result, this will run for 4 hours if I don't turn it off after the event. So as soon as I finish the event, I have to immediately, like when you see me quit, and especially if I have a 9 o'clock meeting, you'll see me quit, and then I immediately jump into YouTube, and then if I'm in a rush, I forget, and then it just runs for 4 hours of nothingness. So, and it's just a missing. I couldn't figure out what they were doing, but it's just missing that bit that says if I stop getting data, I should stop the stream. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was going to give the Restream IO answer just because it's simple and easy, but if you want the best and the expensive route, we use this little orange box called a Wowza Clearcaster that's $3,000 that talks natively to Facebook and gives you 1080p 60. So one of the cool things is if you have a Zoom room, you can then have a switcher, and again, if you're doing this for the best case scenario, you would feed your beautiful image right into your switcher, so that, let's say it was Alex, I would feed Alex into my switcher natively, and then the rest of the gallery view and everything be able to switch to that. So I keep my pristine feed, 10-bit or 8-bit color, whatever you got.
Do you only have to be a participant for that, or to get the solid feed, the solid?
On a webinar, you would have to be a panelist for the Zoom. Are you talking about with the Zoom room to get the good? Yeah, exactly. So that way you can.
And with 3 screens, or even with 2 screens, right? You could have gallery in one, and you could have gallery in one screen and the speaker view or pinned view in the other screen, right?
Yeah, because here's what it looks like. So change view, you can go speaker view, thumbnail view, or gallery view, and then what the audience is seeing. Let me see if I can pull it up quick for input 4. Nope, that's me. Oh yeah, turn that off. And then cut to 1. And then, yeah, you guys can't see it full screen because I don't have my output. But basically now I can pin. So if I want to say, I'm going to go to participants and I'll pin.
Whoa.
Right, you're getting, that's
Sorry, I spotlighted it.
Beiju, yeah. Oh wow. You just
let me unspotlight that.
Okay. Let me go back to Beiju pin video. So now I should be able to cut back to 4 and see Beiju.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the way I would do it. Is I would route it through a switcher, so that way you can have natively your nice pristine image.
And both Clearcaster and the link, if you're going just to Facebook, Clearcaster is the way to go. It's not just, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this, but it's not, you're on a different tier as far as your connection to the network. So if you're doing Facebook stuff regularly, you should use a Clearcaster. Absolutely. Like if it's your professional, like this is what I'm doing all the time, you should always use a Clearcaster. It's a server defined encoder. So what it means is that it will be, the server gets to talk to, tell your encoder, I know I told you to give me 2-second GOPS or 3-second GOPS, but now I want 1-second GOPS, or I want whatever. And it's constantly able to change that. It makes it much easier on the far end to get exactly what it wants at the highest quality all the time. So the if you're going to do Facebook all the time, you should absolutely use a Clearcaster to do it. And it was at some point we're going to get Colleen Henry to get up in the morning, and she works until like 4 o'clock in the morning, and so she's the one that designed it. She had some surgery on her jaw and she couldn't talk for 6 weeks, and she designed the Clearcaster and handed it to Wowza and said, "Here, I need this." So anyway, Beiju.
Yeah, just going back to the question when you mentioned about the problem with Zoom not stopping the stream when you are streaming to YouTube. Have you tried going into the YouTube control panel to that event once Zoom creates the event and then enabling auto stop from there? You should see the tab there. Are you not seeing that?
We can.
So you could.
So we should try it. I'm a little superstitious about changing things inside of YouTube while the stream's running. It does lots of crazy things, like just and every 2 weeks on the code pushes, you don't know what's going to come out the other end. But we generally don't like to, like, once the YouTube event is running, we don't change settings. Like it's just you don't like mess with the settings. You just let it do its thing. We don't even change the description, because it's in the past it has had. And it's been the distant past now, but the scars are still very deep. And so in the past, we've definitely learned that changing things in YouTube while the front and with any of these changing it means that it's doing something to the event. It's going to update the event around the world, and sometimes that doesn't connect completely, and so you're really in an uncharted waters every time you do that. So it doesn't mean that it won't work. It won't work most of the time. It just means it won't work all the time.
Anyway, because we changed the description and stuff around. We haven't had any issues because we had to do it because we had problems. But and we changed this setting once or twice because we accidentally left it on, and we were having connectivity issues, so we switched it off at that time. So it did work for that.
Yeah, it's again, we just do a lot of events, and when we've seen it. It doesn't mean it's going to happen every time. Probably happens 10% of the time, 5% of the time, 1% of the time. But we do enough events where we see it happen, where it just jumps out. So you go, "Ooh, I don't think I'm going to do that." So usually I'd rather just have the rush and do something manual to make it work. All right, next question.
Is it possible? Is it possible we could all get on Zoom's payroll for the R&D lab? Is that? I mean,
no, the payoff is that we get the feature. We hopefully get the features that we want, and then we make money selling them to clients.
All right. So Mike Andrews says regarding Zoom, another Zoom question. Has anybody figured out how you can consistently join multiple times with the same Zoom account, even from different computers you randomly get? You are already logged in. I don't think that's a bug, Mike. I think that's a feature.
Yeah, I think that's a security feature to make sure that only one person can get in. I don't think that they're gonna change that. Next question.
All right, Mr. Mitchells from Washington says, how about this is a tag standard? How about this, maybe comma, as a tag standard based on the regular second hour themes that occur on a weekly basis? So I can't read this. Audio for Tuesday, cam for Wednesday, guest for Thursday, edu for Friday and Saturday, and rotating ones for Monday, like present or production, thoughts, comments, note. Present was short for presentations.
Yeah, we're gonna I'm not totally clear where those tags would go, but we're eventually going to have a website that supports all of this stuff. Right now, my schedule's a little crazy, but as it calms down in November, I will
I'm going to move
spend more
past
time
that
at the end of the
question.
year. Yeah. Anyway, that's
All right.
so
Jeff
it's coming.
Francis says, explain like I'm 5. By the way, Jeff Francis, I love that on Reddit. Explain like I'm 5. Camcorder, color exposure settings, white balance, color temperature, shading, etc.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, so let's start and go down the list. We'll try to do this really quickly. White balance came out of early camcorders when the camera is not as smart as the human eye and the brain combination.
Okay, it's not. That's not what you say to a 5-year-old.
Okay, you're right. Okay,
I'm going to hold you to it. If you're going to answer this question, I'm going to hold you to it.
All right, this is going to be a challenge.
Would you like a lollipop?
White balance.
No, not the 2-year-old. That's not a 5-year-old. 5-year-olds are pretty smart. Yeah. By the time I was 5, I knew where all the equipment was inside of a emergency room. I've been there a lot. So anyway, go ahead.
Let me take a shot at this. White balance equals setting the camera to understand what white is, because white changes with the light the camera is shooting. Color temperature is related to that. That's a Kelvin scale, which is a technical thing, which determines.
You would never say Kelvin to a 5-year-old.
Okay. I think it's a smart 5-year-old, but I'll take point taken. I will keep it simple. Determining how blue or how golden the light is that's coming into the camera. Shading is remote control of a camera by a central person or system. And there's a couple other things that are good. Iris is how much the hole in the lens is open to allow light in. ISO and gain is another thing you should know. ISO and gain is electronically pumping up the signal.
No, can't say that to a 5-year-old.
No. When was the last time you talked to a 5-year-old, Bill?
I haven't had my son is 29.
My grandson is 5 years old. I can nail this. Liam,
okay, go for it.
All of those they're just different ways to make the picture look better.
No. Now you're simplifying too much.
That's what he would want to hear.
So here's how I would say it. I would say, so the sun produces the most light. It just produces all this light and it covers all these different colors. We're human. We could only produce a little bit of that color. So we could only, we could only have a little bit of the sun's color. We can have just this little sample of color, and we like it to be warm. So we have it like
this sample.
Yeah, exactly. So the sun is okay. That's good. So the sun produces all this light, and we can only produce a little bit of that light. And so we have to decide what part of that light we want to use. The white balance is us deciding what part of that light, whether the sun will look because our inside lights are very warm, because that's the best we can do. It's as good as we can do. But the sun is producing all this other light, and a lot of it will look blue. And so we have to figure out where, and the camera can only see a little bit of it. And so we have to figure out where inside of that we put the camera's ability, or, to be able to see that. And so the color balance is figuring out where in that spectrum that the sun creates that we can't create. Where in that area that we can only grab this little part of it. So we have to decide where in that little part in the sun that we put in there. And then shading is us just deciding that we can see a lot, but our camera can't see that much. So we have to while we're doing the show, we have to turn it up, we have to make it brighter or darker, because our camera can only see like a little bit of what we can see with our eye. That would be how
I'm hearing, Dad, can I go play Animal Crossing now?
No. Anyway, so
and then comes fluorescent lighting.
Oh yeah.
Green spikes. Lighting. Let's deal with green spikes.
And fluorescent lighting is evil. It comes from the devil.
Was that
you should, every time you see fluorescent lighting, you should go like this and just go, and just because it's horrible, and just when you're in the presence of it, you might go to hell. So anyway, Stuart, go ahead, Stuart.
3 things. You're 5. Don't play with the camera. You're 5. Let's concentrate on making sure you can point it first, and we'll teach you how it works later. Second or third thing, they're a 5-year-old. Don't teach them how the Kelvin scale is explained. Otherwise, they will be a pyromaniac by the age of 10.
I didn't get there until I was 12, just for the record. Maybe closer to 10. Anyway, all right. Next
that
question.
Was fun.
Oh, this needs to be the how to make coffee. That very question, that's the next teacher's challenge, I think.
Well, we have to perfect coffee first. I'm going to keep you guys focused. It's easy to get lost in let's do more and more challenges. when we create one where we've decided we just can't go any further with the coffee, then we'll start doing other ones. But we have to, master that one, and we haven't mastered it yet. Go ahead, Jeff, and then John.
Please, let's let our 5-year-olds play with cameras before we give them coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, John.
No, I was just going to say, all I can imagine is my 5-year-old granddaughter with coffee. That would be dangerous. We just need to tell them there's a rainbow. Just remember the rainbow.
Yeah, exactly. All right. It's good. Explain to you 5. There's probably a whole series there of just media for 5-year-olds. And then we have to get 5-year-olds to watch it and see if they actually understand it. The one thing I would say about that, and when we get into education, we're talking about the coffee challenge, is that when my daughter was 10, my older daughter, when she was 10 years old, I asked her what she was learning in school, and she was homeschooled. And she's like, well, I was learning about string theory. And I was like, string theory, at 10 years old. I said, and she goes, yeah. I said, explain it to me. And she said, well, you have quantum mechanics, and then you have the Big Bang, and you have, and they don't all line up, about how that actually works. And so the idea behind string theory is you go inside of a molecule and inside of an atom, these little strings of energy. And she starts explaining this whole thing to me. And I was like, where did you learn that? And she said, Nova. So she watched one Nova in 1 hour and learned more than most college students and most people know about it. And my point, it was a seminal moment for me of understanding where education needed to go, which is that if we can spend enough energy on those core concepts where we're animating them and presenting them at a high level, you don't have to have 40,000 physics teachers teaching string theory with a blackboard. You do need a lot of teachers to support students and answer their questions and so on and so forth. But those core concepts done with video at a very high level is a massive opportunity to have people learn a lot faster. Anyway, okay, next question.
All right. So next question, Kyle Hammond from Chicago, Illinois says, trying to help a volunteer find a clean video playback into Zoom. I don't think find is the verb he's looking for there. Any options for a free basic alternative to QLab?
OBS. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, into QLab.
No, I think it's an alternative to QLab.
Oh, an alternative to QLab, VLC.
VLC could be hard to play it out. I think that OBS would probably be easier to play it out, because you'd be able to put the play out into OBS, and VLC you'll have to still do some kind of screen scrape, and I don't think it'll be as easy to get it cleanly into it. Go ahead, Victor, and then Beju.
I would certainly try it in QLab, the free version first, and see if it works, because if it does, you're going to be good to go.
For 20 minutes.
Well, maybe there are some features that work all the time.
Okay.
You cross the threshold and then you're done.
Yeah, Beju.
Yeah, I would just say your OBS is a good option, but go for the new release candidate, which has better playback features. You can actually scrub through the video and pause it, which you can do with the current release. So the RC1 and the RC2 is pretty good.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, the free version of QLab, if all you need is clean video playback, the free version of QLab will work. There's no time limit on it.
Okay, great. Stuart?
The easy way to get it out through VLC is to go into VLC settings and tell it to use the NDI renderer and use the NDI virtual input, and then just swap your cameras in Zoom and it's done.
I wasn't going to do that, but okay.
All right. Next question.
Yeah. By the way, I'm getting a message from Grant through Discord, and there is an option inside the Zoom web settings where you can checkbox it, allow attendees to join from multiple devices. So, Mike, that would be something that the Zoom host has to allow you to do. Jeff Francis, once again, says, looking for recommendations for long HDMI, about 100-foot. I think that's the squiggly. Does that mean about 100-foot camcorder to ATEM? Reliability is important, but inexpensive is nice. One directional is fine. I remember just watching a video on that guy made about a 90-foot one where you were demoing it right there in your house. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hooked up right now. I'm feeding my Pocket 6K into the ATEM Mini with this one from Amazon. It's a Rua Pro. It's $173 for a 30 meter, which is 98 feet, I believe. So that's one option right there.
And you said one way, so you don't care about shading the camera.
No, it shades the camera. This
No, that one does. Oh, Jeff.
Yes.
Okay, so that one shades the camera for 100.
But it does say source and destination, so you can only make it go one direction, but it does talk back over whatever those channels are that allows HDMI to communicate with the ATEM to
So
the
it's
camera.
the same connector on both ends, but they definitely want you to
Yeah,
plug
one
in
says
in the
to
video,
the
one
camera.
direction. You
Yeah,
just gotta
one
pay
says
attention.
source and one says destination.
Yep. Jason and then Jeffrey.
So I mean, one easy way to do it is just use a Ballon. Monoprice will do it for $78.
Ripple does not agree.
It has problem with the high frequency or high pass. So usually balloons don't give the quality of the fiber.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Bob Siglia. As you know, he was on the show a couple months ago with Blackmagic, and he said exactly what Guy said. Actually, pointed to the exact same cable that Guy was talking about, although he can't officially endorse that. And he said that's the best option to do that.
There you go. All right, next question.
Okay, so Tim McKean from Chandler, Arizona says, is there a recommended resource for learning the Zoom Room interface? We have several of these in classrooms, but the interface is just enough different from the desktop client to cause confusion and frustration.
We've had the discussion internally about that because the materials covering the Zoom Room are not very good. And we've been talking about we need to do it because we now have, I think, 16 of them. so we're, we've got it all kind of figured out, but the figuring out part has not been painless. And I think that Kevin has talked to Guy a couple of times about that process, right? I mean, it's just trying to, there is a little bit of a, you're just kind of randomly going through it, trying to figure out why it does what it does. Go ahead, Guy. Were you gonna say something?
I'll just show the interface real quick. It's pretty simple. I mean, well, I'm in this meeting, but I'll go ahead and leave this meeting just for a sec so people can see what the interface looks like. So you've got join, and this makes it really simple. So this is the iPad controller that you're seeing right now.
Can you put a meeting that anybody can just join? Like it's a persistent meeting that people can just jump into to just jump into the room?
Yeah. So if there's a meeting that I go into all the time, like this one, so now it'll join the meeting. And then this is the interface that you see on the iPad controller. Some people have phones that do this. Like I have a Polycom phone at the office that does this. That has the same interface. So it does make it pretty simple. And the basics are, I mean, start video, unmute, mute. And then depending on whose meeting it is, you can, well, actually in meeting, you can do this. You can speaker view and gallery view in meeting. I think as a webinar attendee, you would not have this, only panelists. I'm only seeing this right now because the Zoom Room is actually a panelist. So you would not see this in a webinar. So maybe that's some of the confusion.
Well, and with the Zoom Room though, you can set it up so that you can, the Zoom Room it'll automatically open the meeting if someone calls it.
Yeah, I have mine set up to auto answer, which is kind of freaky in some ways because in the middle of the night, I give Mickey access, and this is my bedroom right here, and Mickey will be out here if I forget to plug in the headphones. He'll start talking, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on out in the hallway? And family's freaking out. Somebody's in the house at 2 a.m. But it is cool.
It's just Mickey.
Yeah, we want to put one in a couple different rooms. So like in shipping, if I want to talk to somebody and say, hey, add something to that package real quick, I just want to be able to auto answer and start talking to them. So if their hands are busy, they can, if they're editing or whatever, they can still continue.
And they don't need to be in the group. They can just have a meeting. It's just a meeting ID to just jump in.
Well, depends on how you have it set up. Like if they're in your network, you can just hit contacts and then just reach directly in there. So
but you can't send them an ID. Like, can you send them an ID that they can just join?
Yeah, that's you would just hit new meeting. So let me jump back. Let me leave the meeting again, and then so from let me see.
But I have to create a meeting for them to do that, right?
No, you can say meet now and just like right now it'll say nobody's invited. So here's
no,
what
but
it
I mean
says.
like so if I don't have any, the thing that we're struggling with is if I don't have a meeting set up with them and I just want to give them a link that just join and show up in it. It seems like I have to set up a meeting to do that.
Oh, Mickey's calling me. Hold on. Wait, I'm going to decline Mickey. Sorry. So I just created a new meeting. I'm the only one in this meeting right now. And then if I want to invite people,
No, but I don't want to invite people. What I'm saying is that I just want them to be able to call in and just have them pop into a screen. Like I want to give them a
part of your
meeting
account.
Yeah,
they'd have to be part of your account.
That's what we're still struggling with, is that people not in our account. But I want to give them, I need to be able to set an ID. And until I change that ID, I want to be able to just give it to people. And if they call it, they immediately drop in. Like they're not in my network, they're not whatever. They just immediately pop in. I can give them a password or whatever. But that's the thing we're trying to get to is that for our system, it's really painful for me to do what they're doing, because we have people coming in all the time, and they're, and we just need them to just come in. Like we sent them the link. And we want to be able to change it. Like I want to change it each day. But the point is, if I send that link out right now, I have to open the meeting and leave it there for them to come in. And that's
what I would do.
That's what we're doing. It's just that it's just like, if someone closes it, now I have to tell whoever else was there not to do that, and so anyway, there's a bunch of pro features that are needed in Zoom for people who are doing what we do, and they just don't exist yet. Jason.
Would join before host work for that?
Maybe. But we'll take a look at it. I mean, you still have to create the meeting. Like I just want an ID that just says, if I go here, it's going to pop me in. John?
Yeah, I mean, the Zoom rooms were originally designed to sort of replace a conference room
I
in
understand.
a building. And so, but what Guy was talking about is, when you just drop in, it auto answers. So there ought to be some way for that to be a persistent meeting, Guy, don't you think?
I think you can do that to where you just have one that, because it does act like a person. So the Zoom room does have
it's a personal ID number.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't know if you could just, I guess you could leave that open all the day, but I don't know if I don't think it'll auto answer. I mean, just for security purposes, because you can figure some high level meetings going on and somebody just drops in because I don't think that works that way.
That's a challenge.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Next question.
All right. Moving forward here. So much Zoom stuff to learn. Sunny Newfield from Winnipeg says, if I'm streaming to more than one service, for example, YouTube or Facebook, would it be better to stream to both from vMix, which allows up to 3 output streams, or should I use Restream.io?
I would use Restream. You're using up more bandwidth on your output. This way that you only have one output. By doing multiple streams, you're putting more CPU pressure on your computer and more pressure on your network. And you're not going to get anything out of it. The only reason you would do that is if you're customizing the stream. So we do a lot where we do different streams, because we're customizing every single stream with GOP size and compression and everything else to each social network, to be just what they need perfectly from the source baseband input. Whereas if you send it to Restream, it's general for everybody. So on higher end events, we want to make each one of these work well. If you're not going to do that, and vMix is it's not that great of a compressor. So it's not going to be amazing anyway. You might as well just send it out to Restream to do that. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Another thing to note is if one of those 3 streams decides to go down on your home machine, the whole thing goes down. Whereas Restream, if they lose connection, which is a more, I don't want to say direct connection, but it's a different type of connection to Facebook, to YouTube, it will go down and then come back up. So, and of course, we've talked about the home network, home internet thing many times. Even right now, I've had some issues this morning where the bandwidth of my stream would drop below a certain number and then come back up. It's what you would want to pay for. If you have the money to pay for it, then do that.
Go ahead, Stuart.
As a vMix user, I would reiterate everything that both of you have just said, but I would also add, if you can offload the streaming itself onto a separate computer, that's a good idea, or preferably like something like a HDMI to IP box. I personally use the VGA output of a second GPU that's just getting the full screen output, so it just sees it like a regular screen on the vMix PC. That feeds through an ATEM Shogun and then out into a HDMI to IP box, and that is what does the stream. So it's all isolated and it takes that load off the computer.
Yeah, I think that Stuart's definitely pointing out when you're using, you just want to respect the fact that you're doing a software switch. And, you can, it's not just that it'll crash, that it is, you'll see frame rate slowdowns when you're doing like lower thirds or sweeps or all kinds of other stuff that are just slow, it's just a little too much for the processor to manage. You're asking that computer to do an awful lot of things at one time. And so the more you can externalize that, the better. Next question.
I'm hoping we can just skip this one, but Jeff Francis came back and he says, okay, explain like I'm 50. Camcorder, color exposure settings, white balance, color temperature. Are you joking, Jeff, or do you really want to go through
Apparently
that?
Jeff isn't a strict constructionist.
Well, I did put tongue in cheek in the notes, but
didn't pop up.
My question is,
what are you trying to figure out?
If you're stuck using a camcorder,
right,
and you don't have all the tools that you can use with a Blackmagic camera and shading remotely, how do you go through the setup of setting color temperature, white balance, exposure?
Back in the day.
Yeah, well, I'll just tell you how I do it, and then when I'm using camcorders is that I will tend to do if I have access to something that's white, I will just do a white balance. I won't try to set the color temperature or anything else. I'll just white balance it because it's going to get you probably closer than anything else that's there. Typical white sheet, or if you want to be a little warm, you get those little blue sheets, those warming ones that'll push it one way or the other. As far as exposure goes, zebras are your friend. So I have zebras typically at 90%. I go a little safe on that and make sure that I can see where I'm going over 90% and try to keep it, only ticking a little bit here and there at 90%. And then I just call it a day. I mean, there's, you're dealing with something that's pretty, and I've shot all over the world with little cheap camcorders. And generally I've gotten pretty darn good color with like little HV20s or whatever, the old or HV40s, I think, from Canon. I did a lot of that 10 years ago. Sky?
And do not use the preset settings. Is that a recommendation? Those film looks and
never.
CPS? Okay.
Ever. Yeah, you're burning a LUT in a horrible consumer LUT into your output. Like it's just never. Just try to get the cleanest signal you can get out of there. You can always do something later. Go ahead, Stuart.
It's a camcorder, and as a 50-year-old, read the manual.
But I would say that it's just know that you're, and especially if you're using a camcorder with other professional cameras, know that those professional cameras you're going to have to sync to the camcorder because you don't have enough tools to sync the camcorder to the professional tools. So if you're trying to do something live, if you start mixing and matching these cameras, you have to think through it. Bill, real quick.
All I was going to say is that the iconography on most consumer camcorders is actually pretty good if you decode what it is. So for indoor shooting, they will often have a picture of a light bulb to indicate that they want a white balance that way. They'll have a picture of a sun to do outdoors. Sometimes they'll have a little rectangular thing to be fluorescent lights. So look at the iconography and read the manual and connect that.
The white balance will just override all of that. So, if you can white balance it, you're better off. And John Ilson, I think, was showing one that you put over top of the lens. So what that does is it just diffuses everything and gives you the kind of the average color there. So that's another approach to that white balance disc. Yeah. So that's another way to kind of grab onto the overall color, which works pretty well. Next question. Speaking of camcorders, while we're waiting for the next question.
Tim McKean. Sorry.
Did anyone see the video for the new GoPro?
I saw Casey Neistat's video for it.
Was it good? Did he like it?
He said basically we have a lot of cameras already, and do we need another one? It's good, but
it's the first camera
you already own are pretty good. It's
the first one past. I have a lot of GoPro 4s because I was doing spherical stuff. The 9 is the first one that I've gone, I might need to get one of those. So it's in a long time. They added a lot of the interchangeable lens. The imagery looks really good. If you look at their video on YouTube at 4K and you see the imagery that's coming out of that camera, it's kind of amazing. And again, one thing you have to remember is it's not your phone. Like your phone can do most of those things, but if your phone falls off your mountain bike as you're going down, you're gonna be really bummed.
Stabilization?
It has great stabilization. Yeah, it's really, really good.
The little selfie screen on the front. kind of cute.
Yeah, yeah, for the selfie stuff, it looks really good. I think it's actually a pretty compelling camera, and it's the first one that I've seen compelling for a while.
Now we
you
all know what
from
to
them.
get Alex for Christmas.
Yeah, I'll have one by then. All right, Jason.
You know, every single time I've used a lot of GoPros for like disposable filming and whatnot, you know, wanting 2 or 3 angles that I can't quite get because the rig is too big.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel like the issue with GoPros is that there's a gotcha, and the gotcha always happens at the 11th hour, and it just bugs me.
Yeah, the interfaces, you really have to use it all the time or you get caught all the time, you know, but we've used them a lot for time lapses. I mean, a lot of what we did with them when we stopped doing spherical is every time we go to a setup, we try to put time lapses in because clients love them and viewers love them. They love watching things happen quickly. Go ahead, Stuart.
Watching Casey's video, and I'll agree with Kyle Hammond's comment in the chat. Yeah, everybody will want the radio controlled car more than the camera. But I don't know if many people noticed, but the camera has changed body shape again. So all of your previous accessories will need to be replaced again. So it's not just buying a new camera, it's buying all the add-ons that fit onto it.
There's the gotcha. There it is.
All right, next question.
Okay, so Tim McKean says from Chandler, Arizona, can Alex talk about how he started office hours? What were the early first steps to build awareness and momentum? By the time I heard of it, there was already several hundred showing up, and the panel has mostly remained the same.
It's constantly changing a little bit, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of people here that have been here almost the whole time. I have a Twitter account, so that's been the and I'm pretty flat on my Twitter account, so I don't really worry about losing people. I don't think of it as losing people. I think of it as pruning. So I just say what I'm going to say on Twitter. I don't really worry about whether people are going to leave or not leave or follow or whatever. And so when I'm losing, I stay at about an equilibrium of about 39,000, but I'm adding 30 or 40, 30 or 40 a week and losing 30 or 40 a week. So it just I'm some kind of equilibrium of I'm making a certain number of people angry and they decide to leave. I don't care much about size as much as I care about quality, quantity, quality. And so all I did was jump up on Twitter and just say, hey, I'm doing this thing. And I was pretty sure that at least 30 or 40 people would show up. And I think that's about what happened. 30, 40, 50 people showed up for the first ones or signed up. And then they just told their friends and they told their friends and like it was, and I talked about it on Twitter. It jumped a fair bit when I started talking about it on MacBreak, but I didn't talk about it on MacBreak for a couple months, I think. It was one of those things that I didn't want the pressure, because when you think about what those things look like when you're building something, so this is about the fourth one of these that I've done. I'm always playing with this idea of online communities, and what you want it to do is you want it to get denser. There's a temptation to want to make it really big, really fast. And the problem is that you can't create a culture and a community inside of that. And so we have an understanding, whether it's in Discord or whether it's here, about how we do things and how we ask questions and how we process it and everything else. And so what you want to do is you want to grow, and then you want to let it kind of come back in and have the people who are really into it stay in it and keep on bringing people in. And then you'll do another expansion out, and then you'll pull people back in, but you're not trying to
sauce reduction.
Yeah, it's like sauce reduction. That's a great analogy. And so you're constantly kind of doing that to create something that's really rich, which is why you do sauce reduction. And so so the part of what makes this work is the fact that we're not trying to, we go through spurts of growth where I'll push really hard and try to add 500 or 1,000 people to the mailing list. And then I'll sit there and let it kind of pull down a little bit, and then we'll push out again. And so, but it allows us all to get to know each other. And it allows a culture to kind of form, and so, so we've done, and then what happens is that I make it certain things difficult so that I keep the kind of people that I'm trying to keep. so it's, the thing is that the quality of the group here, which is, I believe, very high, everything from the attendees to the panelists to Discord, is a very high quality group of people. But by saying things like you can't swear, and you have to be appropriate, and and being pretty iron fisted about it, there's a lot of people that just don't like that and they leave. And that's exactly how it's designed. So I'm like, don't let the door hit you in the butt. And so you're trying to make something where the people who are passionate about what you're doing, this is a great place for them to be. And I think that there's a future in, and then what you want to do is keep on sifting, knowing that for 1 out of 10 people that find out about office hours will keep coming. And that's exactly the way it's designed, is 1 out of 10, and so you just want to keep on increasing that exposure and continuing to figure out how to make it better for the folks. But I've made mistakes of having ones where I grew it way faster, and it just becomes really hard to manage that communication. And it's hard. It's like something that grew really fast. It's not very dense, and so we're producing a really dense community. And so it just takes time, so anyway, and all I want to say is that I appreciate everybody continuing to play, with this thing. It's a pretty amazing group that we've somehow, collected. And it says, the people who are here says as much about all of you as it says about anything else. It's just that the kind of people here want to move things down the path, want to be part of a community, want to, make a difference, and I think that's the whole system is designed around pruning, to that group. Go ahead, Sky, and then we'll move on.
Well, again, I refer to it as the Alex's sandbox, but you actually came up with the name office hours for a reason. And for those that don't have that education background, what is office hours?
I mean, office hours is just when you're when you're a teacher, you just open up there's times when people can just walk in and ask questions. And so it was really designed around that idea that you can just walk in and have questions. And admittedly, I said I wasn't going to program anything. I was talking to Chris about this earlier. I was like, I'm not going to program anything. I just want to be able to turn it on and we talk, and then we turn it off. And now, of course, second hours have come in and we program the whole thing. And so it's like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do for the second hour. So,
follow up with Mokana as well. That's critical to this.
Mokana is the function of I think,
as a name now, but as a name,
Mokana it's Shona, and it is a fortunate time to do something, it's an opportune time, and so anyway, but it is it's a function of over a decade of playing around with Q&A systems and chat systems and everything else. I think that there's a future where what I think of is what I call a scalable conversation. And that's what we're experimenting in, is this idea that we can have a conversation with hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of people at one time. And how do we do that? And so figuring out, because I think that when we figure that out, it changes kind of everything, and I think that if you look at, advertising is going to become less and less important. It's not going to work much longer. I mean, Apple is starting to show you where everybody's going, which is we're just going to crank it down. As soon as Apple puts out iOS 14 and starts to really turn that knob on where you have to get notified, they're giving everybody a little bit more warning, and then they're going to turn it off, and so advertising could be whacked really hard. And the bottom line is, we don't want to see it. If you're in a business where no one wants you, that's not a stable business to be in, and no one wants to watch ads, and so, my kids don't even understand them anymore, because I cut the cord 25 years ago. So they haven't really seen a lot of like old TV ever in their whole life. And so they don't understand, like when they're like, how can you watch this? And like the only time I ever see ads is football games. And I purposely start my Steeler games half an hour late, because I'm not talking to anyone about it. I'm not on Twitter about the whole thing. And so I started half an hour late so I can skip through all the ads, and so the thing is that brands and organizations and people have to build communities around their brand. They have to build those things out so that they have that contact and they have a place that their users can be supported. If you look at what we're doing here, we're all learning from each other really fast. If you took if you build a community like this, let's say, because Terri's here, LumaForge could build a whole community around that, where people always have a place to go every day or every week. And there's a couple hours of just answering questions, random questions of, I don't understand this, and I don't understand why this doesn't work. But the point is that, and there's a lot more that could be done here. I'm still futzing around and figuring out how to make it work in my spare time. This isn't my full-time job. So I have a whole job that's 60, 70 hours a week that's outside of this. As we figure this out, though, I think that there's a lot of ways to create a lot of support for users and people that are interested in your organization, people, whether it's a church or whether it's a business or whether it's a, your community organization. But it's more than just forums. It's more than just Nextdoor. It's more than just, there's something about this live interaction that allows us to learn from each other faster. What are you gonna say, Chris?
Alex,
I
I
was
must say,
Okay.
I don't know how to do a standing ovation.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Chris?
What I was going to say to Terri is, Terri, and we'll get into this second hour, take your NAB budget, give it to Joseph to do a daily show for a year, and tell me it's not better. Also, Alex, I was curious, how do you know?
But again, but if everybody did that, if everybody at NAB did that, NAB would go away because the vendors would immediately get way more return. And then what you do is you cross-pollinate between them. So, you have different vendors that are congruent, having different communities, and then moving them back and forth. And then you end up with, and then people end up in all these communities, and then people stop watching TV. Go ahead, Chris.
And the actual question I had, Alex, is being a cord cutter, how do you know what beer and potato chips to buy?
I just drink Rasputin beer. So I like it. I like feisty beer.
You like pancake batter.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Terri, real quick.
Yeah, I just should mention that you said LumaForge, and I'm not sure if they'd want me
LumaFusion.
representing them.
I apologize. In my head, LumaForge and LumaFusion just go they cross all the time. I'm sure you have. That's not the first time.
I love LumaForge, so it's okay with me, but I'm not sure it'd be okay with them.
I'm sure that they'd be okay. Sam would probably be okay if I said that. So but LumaForge should do it as well, and LumaFusion. So I apologize for that. They're in my head in the same shelf. For some, the Luma puts them in the same shelf and when I'm talking.
Yeah, we do some work with Sam, so it's a lot of people cross do Luma.
Both great brands. Anyway, so let's what were you gonna say, Chris? And then
more.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go ahead and jump through those questions.
Philip Tesoro from Brisbane, Australia says, I had early work days and missed a couple of episodes, so I'm not sure if you discussed this or not, but Alex, what is your take on Triller? If you have Triller.
I just registered. So I hadn't used it much before. I saw it kind of coming up and I registered to it. I mean, it looks a lot like TikTok. I find that the interface is a little cleaner than TikTok. I haven't tested the phone app to see how it works. So I haven't produced anything. I have a tendency to just jump on platforms and put my name in, just get my name, so I don't have it for TikTok. Someone beat me to it because I was a little too slow, but I do have it on TikTok. Anyway, so, but yeah, so it's very much like TikTok, and they got Charlie DeMello just joined. I'm sure they paid her a lot of money to do that. She on TikTok has, I think, almost 100. Maybe I don't know if she's crested over 100 million followers on TikTok, but she's on her way. But she's opened up on Triller. I think that a lot of TikTokers are going to jump on it because they have to diversify. Now that TikTok is going to be Oracle, it's like I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say it. It's like 50-year-old dating an 18-year-old, or it's just a very odd thing. Anyway, next question.
Mark Evans says, what experience do others have with Switcher Studio? It seems to be a software solution to manage several iPhones or iPads. Looking for a solution for some smaller Zoom church events in locations away from main AV setup, driven by pretty competent volunteers.
John and then Jeff.
I like Switcher Studio, but I also use Cinemaker with an iPad control and 4 iPhones, and it has better wireless connections with Cinemaker.
And Cinemaker's new, isn't it? Relatively new.
It's been around for about 3 years, but they're really exploding right now. But it's a really great program, great app.
Jeff,
I would say you'd probably want to bring your own Wi-Fi if you can't wire in the phones, iPads that you're using for Switcher Studio. And also think about how you're going to do sound, because it defaults to just using the mics on the individual phones that are out there as your cameras. If you're trying to do sound some other way, there's going to be a very large delay you need to compensate for.
Yeah, but both Cinemaker and Switcher have a way of automatically aligning the audio when it's Wi-Fi. It works fairly well on both of them.
Next question.
Magic. It's magic, I tell you. Mike Henderson from Colorado says, speaking of GoPro, anyone have a tall tripod mount they like or recommend for time lapse, or just gaff tape to it and a wall?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would just get the what do you call this? A C stand with a super clamp with a Noga arm or whatever you want to call it, Israeli arm, articulating arm. And yeah, you can get the C stand pretty high. If you need to go any higher, add some Gobo arms.
I've used a lot of the newer NEEWER. They have little clamps that just grab onto things, and then you put an Israeli arm that Newer makes as well for like $11 or something, and you put them on there, and they work great. There it is. That's the one that they make. So you put that into the little. Do you have the little claw that grabs on? No, there's a little. There's like the.
Yeah, I do. I just don't have it.
I don't have it
one.
in arm's reach. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, those work great for kind of mounting them, and I use them a lot. Go ahead, Bill, and then we'll go into the last question.
If you're not working with a wall, Manfrotto makes some really tall, relatively lightweight aluminum stands. I used to have a 17-foot one that I would put something light like a GoPro. You don't use them for bigger cameras. And then you can also just use guy wires, put something up at the head and bring it down and stake it into something, or put it under a chair if you're inside. So there are lightweight rigs.
I very much recommend attaching it to things that are part of the, if you know that people aren't going to walk against it or move it or whatever, attaching it to the building is better than long poles, because the poles will vibrate, and they'll vibrate and they'll sway, and it really causes a lot of work that you have to do later with your stabilization. Go ahead, Stuart.
Well, I was just about to mention that a lot of cheap light stands have a 1/4-20 screw on the top of it, but yeah, for the point you just made, when people walk past, it's going to shake everywhere. I've mentioned a particular electronics store in Australia called JCar before.
They're amazing.
They have a really cheap set of GoPro kits, and you can get one that'll go from your normal two mount things. It gives you a 1/4-20 thing that'll screw onto the bottom of a standard GoPro mount.
That's great.
So it'll go on any tripod.
Last question.
James Babbitt from San Diego says, on Tuesday, when logging into YouTube, Phil Langer then had to log into Zoom, and so there was no recording. What was the issue about signing into Zoom after signing into YouTube? Do we know?
I don't know. What was the issue, Phil?
So when I went to hit the go on the air button, it popped me right into a browser for a Zoom login. Now I was
Zoom login or a YouTube login.
It was a Zoom URL, and it was asking me for, because I had done the whole Gmail thing.
Right.
I'd gotten through
that. I'm sure it's a security issue.
Yeah, we should test it if we want to do that again.
We'll test that again. Sorry for everybody for that, but we're getting closer. At least we tried. All right. We're going to switch schedules, and before we get started here, I'm going to let everybody know that I have a little production emergency that at 8:30 I'll probably wander off, and I'll leave it to Phil and Chris to keep it going. But we're going to get started here. We are now we're changing subjects here. I've been watching LumaFusion build up over years, and generally going to things like NAB and going to the showstoppers and hanging out and talking to folks there. And I think that while a lot of us, as I said in my in our email this morning, a lot of people are waiting for Final Cut to come to the iPad. We don't have to wait. There's most of these tools are all there right now, and LumaFusion is that solution. And so I think that I've been wanting to bring them on for a while. So I'm excited to have Terri Morgan here. Terri, how you doing?
Hi, thanks. I'm doing well, and I'm really glad to be here.
It's been great. It's been great to have you here for the whole time, actually contributing to our conversation. I think you're one of the first that has done that. Usually people just come for the second hour, so it's great.
Really enjoying it.
Hopefully you'll come back again. Now, how did LumaFusion get started? What was the genesis of it?
Well, so I'm the co-founder, and Chris Damaris is the other co-founder, and we had each worked for years. I've been working in video development since, I guess, 1995, and been editing since 88. So my whole career has been about editing, but as a freelance editor in Seattle, I started taking on other jobs, mostly with companies that were building software for video editing, like Lightworks and Tektronix and so on. And so through the years, I ended up working at Fast Multimedia and Pinnacle Studio and eventually Avid, where I met Chris Damaris, who is one of the most brilliant developers I've ever met in all those years. And we, in those big companies, you just get sold over and over. Your team gets sold to another company and another company. So I maybe had never looked for a job. I just got moved from one company to another. And at the last time when Avid sold the consumer division, which we were making Pinnacle or Avid Studio for iPad together with Chris and I and a small team. And we were sold to Corel. And Chris and I said, you know what? I think it's time we know what we're doing here. So let's go off and do our own thing. So while supporting Pinnacle Studio for iPad for Corel, Chris and I in the background built LumaFusion. And that took 3 years. And I'm the designer and he's the developer. So
great. And what's the where did you start with, and what year was it? How long ago did it actually launch?
Yeah, it launched in the very last week of 2016.
Right.
But we started developing it in 2013. So. Right. Yeah, it took us 3 years, and that was a tough 3 years. There's no income for developing a product that doesn't exist. But yeah, when we launched in let's say 2017, because it was the last week of 2016, and since then it's just gotten better and better. So
yeah, absolutely. And what has been the big thing that you've learned from how users are using it? Like where does it show up a lot?
What does it show? Where does it?
Where do you have an idea of what people are using it for?
Oh yeah. So, well, we have a huge variety of users, but on the professional end, we have a lot of journalists that use it. People from RTE and BBC and other places do use LumaFusion on their phone because they can shoot, edit, and deliver right from their phone. So journalists mostly use it on the phone, but then there's a whole nother segment of professionals that are using it because they can travel with it. So for instance, there's a customer, Angelo Ciaccio, who did a documentary called The Ephemera Life. And he traveled the world for a whole year just with what he carried on his back, which was LumaFusion and a DSLR. And he would go to a very, very remote place that was a disappearing community, shoot, go to his tent, edit on LumaFusion with, you don't need internet because he was storing his media on I think it was a Western Digital drive at the time, right. And then serving LumaFusion with its local connection. And then when he'd get to a cafe in a city or something, he'd upload his weekly project or his monthly project, whatever it was. So he did that for a full year. And it was just, the stories he brought back home were stories that they just shocked and amazed me because they were so remote and so amazing. So I think there's that kind of traveler that uses it. Kids, schools, they are enjoying not only the price of it.
What's the price?
It's $29.99.
Amazing.
In US. So.
Usually, if I ask the price, it usually means I just want to show off that it's like you and I have done this for long enough, and a lot of us here in the panel have done it for long enough. I bought a piece of software, 3D piece of software for $7,500, and Final Cut at one point was $999, and didn't do nearly as much as the current LumaFusion. And so I'm kind of amazed at what the iOS store, the App Store has done, is just made it possible for us to buy things at $30 that have amazing features.
Yeah. And we get two kinds of feedback about the price. One is from professionals. They say, oh my gosh, you can't sell this for $30. That's way too low price for what it does. Right. And then we get feedback from people that, weren't around 30 years ago and didn't spend $60,000 on their first editing system that say, $30, how can you possibly charge that? Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges of developing on the iPad?
Actually, compared to developing for Windows, it's pretty amazing. So when we were working at Fast Multimedia, I mean, we'd have a daily build, but by the time the testers or any users got to see it, it could be months, or it could at least be, if you made a request for a bug to be fixed, it could be months before you even see the light of day of that. And so Chris and I can get on the phone or on Slack, and I can say, this isn't feeling right. And, within a few minutes, I can have a build that he's fixed the problem. So this is pretty amazing. So
and do you cut on it all the time? Or is that part of your job is just to go out and shoot and do projects?
Yeah, I mean, our whole team does. So we right now we have an internal challenge going to recreate a TV opening with LumaFusion. So that, we all do use it. I kind of, when we came out with LumaFusion, although I was a Final Cut Pro editor, I kind of committed to always using LumaFusion as far as I could possibly take it, and just to test it out and make sure it's up to par.
Well, I think it's important. I think that sometimes software companies have a hard time of not dogfooding their own work and not having somebody in-house that really knows it, that's going to guide the engineers towards the right solution. They're just not going to know unless they're doing it all the time. So can you show us a little bit of the
I should. I'd love to. Let me share my screen here.
And if you have questions about it, this is the time to ask while we're working through it. I see some starting to pick up. So, but we're going to do this for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're going to start opening up to the audience. And so ask your questions now. Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, so I have quite a bit to show you on LumaFusion because it can do a lot of different things. So what I'm just going to play a little bit of this sequence here. Let me know if it's too loud. But LumaFusion has keyframing. It has multiple layers of effects on every clip. It has 6 tracks of 4K video and an additional 6 tracks of audio. You could do 12 tracks of audio. So you can put an audio clip on a video track, for instance. You can use color correction.
And we're having a little hard time hearing you over the music.
Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and just talk. So some of the things I said were you have multiple layers of effects on every clip. You have 6 layers of video, 4K video, and an additional 6 layers of audio. I don't have 6 layers right here, but you can have 6 layers of audio, or you could have 6 or 12 layers of audio. So there's also green screen, all sorts of layering effects. If you look in here, and if I double tap on this guy here, you would see I've got a crop on just the person in her eye. But one of the things I like the most about editing with LumaFusion is we've taken what Final Cut has, which is the magnetic timeline, and married that with some things I really like as an old-fashioned editor, which is insert and overwrite, more track-based editing. So I have headers that I can lock tracks and view tracks, and I can also unlink clips. So if I go in here and trim a clip, you see I've got all those things linked up. But if I wanted to unlink a clip in here, I just go to the unlink button. And now when I trim, that clip is going to stay where I put it. So it has a lot of power over how your timeline moves and just over telling your story in general.
That's great.
When you let me go ahead and create a new project so you can see that. So if I go in here and create a new project, you can see we have a number of different frame rates that you can choose from to start your project. and also all these different aspect ratios for everything from,
It's gotten so confusing.
yes. Yeah, I mean, this actually what you're looking at is a beta version right now. So the interface on this menu isn't exactly the way it will be, but
Right.
but our normal version has all these aspect ratios as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can do even VR. Sorry, 360 video. Yeah.
Yep. That's great.
And also coming up, this isn't out yet, but the reason I loaded the beta version is to show now we'll be doing not only Rec 709, but HDR in HLG, HDR10, and P3 HLG. So you can set up your project however you like. I'll go ahead and just set up one here. So when you have a clip, here's your library. The library has all these different places you can come from. One of them is Frame.io. So if I go into my Frame.io library, hopefully I'm logged in here. Yeah, I can just take a clip, and this is now coming straight from Frame.io. So I can mark an in here, and I'm just using gestures to mark ins and outs and just drag that to the timeline. And because it's coming from Frame.io, it's going to download that media in the background. But I don't really need to wait for that to download to continue working. I can do things like frame gestures to go frame by frame, mark in by swiping down, and so on. And just drag that to the timeline. Pinch to zoom, trim. So these are, it's just super fun to use. So one thing I noticed when I started editing on LumaFusion, and actually on iPad, but especially on LumaFusion, is that, when I first started editing in '88, I loved editing. I mean, it hit me like a lightning bolt that this is what I wanted to do with my life, is to edit. I mean, I just loved it. And over the years, you edit and edit and edit, and it can get a little bit tedious. You're like waking up every day for a 15-hour day of sitting in a chair and feeling kind of trapped. It takes the life out of it a little bit. But when you start editing on iPad, you have this sort of liberty and freedom that you haven't felt for many years. And it is just a great feeling.
That's great.
So if you double tap on a clip, you get a series of editors down here. The frame and fit editor allows you to move and shrink and crop. You can do even like a soft edge. So if I wanted to go in here and, go down to the edge softness, quarter radius here. So you can do sort of things like this. You can also, I'm gonna reset that and go over here. You also have all your color controls. So I could do different presets, but you can also come in here and adjust, things like your red, blue, green, your gamma, and so on. Or you can use LUTs. So in this case, I think I shot with a log, and so I can now go in and choose a filmic D log or D flat, or any other LUT that you want to import for creative reasons.
So you can bring any cube in. You could go into, for instance, Resolve, go and build a cube based on what you're doing, and then just drop it in here.
Yeah, or 3DL. And these effects over here can be layered and layered and layered. So we've got these sort of, I already kind of have a vignette on there, but I'll put in an additional vignette. So you can do multiple layers. So I'm just going to make something crazy so you can kind of see how far you can take this. Not that effects are necessarily where we tend to spend our time as editors, but I just want you to see that these are things that you can layer over here. So now I'm going to put a zoom blur on that, and they have interactive controls on the screen. And if you reorder these layers, you can get a different effect. So you can turn them off and on. We also have a chroma key. So if I go back to my other edit, which I know I color coded it purple. So if I type in purple, I should see it here.
Do these effects come with your existing build? I mean, or those
Oh, yeah.
an add? Oh yeah, she said, oh yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
word.
for sure. So for instance, on this dog here, I'm going to go in and let's take the chroma key off of here. And I've already put, I've already positioned the dog where I wanted with the frame and fit editor. And if I go over here to my keyer, put in the chroma key, and then I can start adjusting the range to get a nice clean key. I've got erosion, edge blur, and spill suppression. And you can show the mask if you want to get in there and fix
And
it.
do you have any kind of API if people want to write their own green screen keyers or other things for it?
We do not have an API for that, no.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? So there's also an audio editor, a speed control editor, and all of these effects are keyframeable. So for instance, if I go into this woman here, I can go in and look at what she's got on her color and effects. Oops, sorry, I went full screen there. See, did I click on the right person here? Oh wait, no, I didn't want to do her. Sorry, that's why I want to go in the background clip. So this background clip is, it has a light tunnel and an invert on, and so I'm going to turn off the light tunnel and turn off the invert, and you can see that's the original clip. If I put a kaleidoscope on there and turn on keyframing for that event, I'll just do that, and then move along the thing. I can move this wherever I want. And over time, these are going to be moving now. So I'll just play that. So this is all real time sort of stuff. And it just makes like playing with LumaFusion is just.
And where do I see the keyframes?
So they are right down here on this line. So if you see where my finger is moving,
oh yeah,
now I'm on a keyframe. So it works so that if I didn't have this keyframe here, so if I delete this so what we're working on right now is the ability to have sort of a linear or an eased in keyframe, or both for speed and position. So we'll have Bezier curves on there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sky, go ahead.
What's the processor? Because the GPU and the CPU is where we used to have to, particularly in the blurs and the Gaussians and all of that, and was always dependent upon the horsepower of the box. What iPad do I have to go out and buy now?
Well, the more the better, but iPads are fat. Most of our customers will say, it's amazing that I can do this in real time.
Yes.
And scrub in real time and get all this stuff in real time. I can't do that on my iMac. And it's Apple. We take credit for some of our Spry engine. Well, all of our Spry engine. But Apple's AV Foundation is, unbelievable.
Apparently. And the other question is, all of that media is now living locally. You've pulled it down from the web. Again, storage has been the other nemesis of editing, and we would have to use proxies. And you're saying these are 5 layers of 4K, and you're playing in real time on an iPad?
Yeah, you can play on an iPad Pro. You could play 6 layers of 4K video. As for storage, so we have, because of the way the system works, we have to have the media local, but we've done a lot of work to make sure that you can get just the media that you want to work with on your system. And when you need to clear something off, we have a whole function for making a project package, which packages up the used media and the timeline, and you can put it somewhere else, take it off your iPad and bring it back on seamlessly later.
And what codecs does it play nicely with?
H.264, 265, and let's see.
Blackmagic?
The H.264 and 265, and then the new one will be HEVC with transparency, so you'll be able to have a alpha channel.
That's great. Chris?
Terri, you just said something that could be interpreted as when you're pulling media off of Frame.io, do you have to pull the entire clip, or can you mark an in and an out and then just pull down portions of it? I can't remember exactly what you said, but
Right.
it sort of alluded to that.
Yeah. I believe on Frame.io it transfers the whole clip, but there are I'm sorry, but I can't remember that. I do know that if you're using a NAR box, you know, NAR box has a little computer right in the drive, then we can just pull down what you're using. So
Yeah,
but
I'm
actually,
not
I don't know
complaining.
what
It
Frame.io
sounded
does.
like a fantastical stretch request, but that's still this is totally amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we do support that if the API or the system does support that as well.
So as somebody who literally sits at a computer 10, 12 or more hours a day editing, I cannot imagine a life where my posture is looking down at something and I have to touch my screen. Do you find that tiresome, or is there tricks or tips that you have for extended edits?
Yeah, I mean, well, so again, you know, get a good iPad, get a bigger iPad.
Of course.
But also, we
The
do
iPad Maxi.
we do support an external preview. So if I had an HDMI, or if I was connected via AirPlay to a monitor, I would have two more buttons here that would allow me to have my preview on the output monitor. So you'd still be looking down to edit, but you'd be looking up and seeing a full res, you know, HDMI preview.
I saw the shot of the woman at the bridge with the iPad in front of her looking down, and immediately my neck started to hurt.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I do tend to, well, I have a funny posture, and I've had it from editing for years. Is I do the sink into my chair thing, and that's the way I've edited even before iPad. So put my feet up under the desk. So I haven't noticed exactly. You see it. That's Chris.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, is there a way to get info on a clip? I loaded LumaFusion on a long time ago, so I have this clip here that I believe I imported from my 6K, and I was wondering how, it says, you know, 3840 by 2160, so I can see it's 4K, but it's not an MP4 like some of my other clips. Is there a way to drill down?
Yes. So if you highlight the clip on the timeline, and then you press the info button right here, you can then see the information about the clip.
Oh, wow.
Add
So this,
notes, change the name.
okay, so it is H.264, but this clip was a raw clip running at 399.7 megabits. So it's and it plays it like butter. I'm super impressed that it can play that big of a clip like that. That's fat.
Yeah, we have to
monster.
give Apple credit for that, for the most part. Although, you know, I think our engine for the timeline, you know, how we put together the timeline and how it's optimized does make a huge difference as well. So the Frame.io integration is free. There are a couple things in LumaFusion that we do have as in-app purchases. And we did choose that model on purpose because the things that we put as in-app purchases we felt were pro-level features. So we want everyone to be able to afford the basic operation of LumaFusion, but then if you want more, like the ability to export an XML project package for Final Cut Pro, then that is an in-app purchase. And then there's one more in-app purchase, just because I know people ask, is Storyblocks. And this is an in-app purchase for a library of footage, backgrounds, music, loops, sound effects, and so on. And there's some things in there that are free. And this library is the Storyblocks library, but made for LumaFusion. And we've basically taken the media that is appropriate for iOS and put that in here. And we've added some nice filters. So for instance, if I want blues music, I think this is running a little slow because of my network. It's usually not so slow. But, and I want, so I choose blues. I might choose that I want a guitar, which is kind of obvious, but I can also choose that the mood on there. And then I will get a variety of songs that I might want to play here. So I just chose
Storyblocks audio.
And then once I drag that down onto my timeline, it's going to probably ask me if if I hadn't purchased it, it would ask me if I wanted to purchase it, but it'll also download that clip now into my local library.
That's great.
Yeah.
Chris, you got more questions?
Yeah, yes, I have plenty of questions, but from the panel, yes, I do. Tony Mobley from Noonan says, how well does LumaFusion work on the iPad 7th generation, the A10 processor?
iPad 7th generation.
Where do you support down to?
Anything that runs on iOS 13 will run LumaFusion. I mean, the limitations come with whether you can put 4K based on the device, and then the performance. It doesn't not work, but if you're outperforming, if you're pushing your device, it's not going to stop playing, but it'll show fewer frames during playback to allow you to play your sequence. Of course, it has no effect on the output. The export will still be perfect, but the playback during editing will be fewer frames.
And I need to drop out to go to my production. Terri, thank you so much for joining us and your time. You keep going. I'm just saying that I'm going to drop out. I just want to thank you for coming. Hopefully, we're going to see you again in our panel.
I hope so. Thanks,
okay,
Alex.
Awesome. Thank you. Keep back to regular scheduled program.
We will move forward.
All right, great. Thanks.
Yeah, Terri, thanks a lot for this. So we have actually quite a few questions coming in from the panel. So let's try and rip through some of these.
Okay.
Mr. Comfort from New York says, how close are we getting to real speed ramping?
Yeah. Okay. Well, speed ramping is, so some features are easy to develop and have a big impact, and some features are hard to develop and have a big impact. And speed ramping is one of those things that we need to rewrite our whole speed engine unless Apple changes something. But right now we're using, I don't know what the technical term for it is, but some sort of Apple devised thing. So we can go 6x and we don't have speed ramping. In order to make speed ramping, we need to redevelop our speed engine. So it's not that we're not going to do that, but there are things that I was going to announce today that we are working on that we feel will take mobile editing to the next level.
Do you have those announcements you want to make now, or is that?
Yeah, I was going to just say them now.
Oh, let's do this. Okay, questions. Yeah. You lose to new announcements. Go, Terri.
Okay, yeah. I will just say that our new things coming up that we are working on now, we're working on a whole new audio GUI and a new engine for audio. So we'll also have the third-party AU plugins back. They were crashing, like some of them were crashing LumaFusion if they weren't done right. So we had to take them out, but those will be back, but also a whole new UI for audio with interactive controls and a new engine. We are working on subtitling. So you'll be able to import an SRT file. You'll be able to have multiple languages supported on a single timeline. And you'll be able to export it as metadata or export it as burnt in and so on, or as a sidecar file. And the big one that I'm so excited about, because it's like a game changer, and we haven't said it out loud yet before today, but is multicam. So we're working on having a multicam cutting on the timeline. So you'll be able to see your however many clips,
Angles.
probably 6, I would guess, for start, and switch between them with your finger, make a cut, and so on. So these are the things that we're working on. I feel like I missed a couple of them. Oh yeah, the advanced keyframing with ease in, ease out curves and moving keyframes. And coming up very soon is the green screen, the new green screen with edge softness and spill suppression, HDR support, 10-bit support. So these are like, we're busy. We're busy
Yeah,
folks.
obviously. Okay, let's do a couple more questions. John Rainbow says, is an iPad Pro necessary to edit with LumaFusion? If not, what is the recommended lowest iPad model? We kind of talked about that.
Yeah, anything that'll run iOS 13 is okay.
All right, let's move forward. Also, John, wait, I think I'm sorry. Same thing. Laura Seal says, interested in media management with the app. How do most people ingest and export content?
Right. Well, you can import media from any of these places, or if the media is in your Files app.
Are you showing us something we can't see?
Oh, sorry. I guess I stopped sharing.
We may have turned it off because we wanted to see you making announcements.
Yeah. So here's all the places you can export or import from: Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, and wireless networks drives like Western Digital or NARBox. But also in the case of some of those wireless network drives like NARBox, you can just connect your NARBox up, and if I had it connected, I would see the media, just right now it's going to say I don't have it connected, but I would see the media there and be able to use it from there. Frame.io is a big one. And the reason Frame.io is so important to us is partly because they allow us to edit ProRes with proxies that they create and deliver to us seamlessly. And then when you export to Final Cut Pro, you can export a Final Cut Pro project package and relink to your original ProRes in Final Cut.
Very cool. Yeah, so you're being able to take advantage of some of the new media management stuff with the proxies, with the new proxy features in 10.4.9 or whatever they're calling it. 10 not quite 5.
Okay. Are you talking about for?
You mentioned that you could edit with proxies and then relink to the full media.
Right.
That's one of the features of 10.4.9.
Of Frame.io, yes. Mm-hmm.
So obviously you're very friendly in the Apple world, and your intention is to always make if somebody like myself needs to finish in Final Cut 10, I can get this timeline accurately into Final Cut.
Yes, you can.
That's amazing.
And there's there's certain things that like we won't be able to transfer over, like some of our effects don't transfer over to Final Cut.
I think most editors totally get that.
Yeah.
There's at a certain point, I think anybody who, Sky, Bill, tell me if you agree, at a certain point in any edit system, you realize I'm going out onto the thin ice and this is non-transferable anymore. This is
totally
now a
true.
Final Cut
How do you
edit.
map a magnetic timeline into a non-magnetic timeline? It's not a trivial discussion.
But
but
you could take a non-magnetic and drop it into a magnetic and then let it whatever.
I mean,
Sky,
because we are basically a magnetic timeline with some added features. So yeah, it did take work, but we managed to do that.
It's really beautiful, Terry. Sky, question?
Well, two things, Terry. You and I are going to have coffee very soon.
Yay.
I'm just about 8 miles north of you. I just saw that you dropped audio up on above the video, and I'm such an old school that just feels wrong, but I'll accept it. I'll move on.
Audio has zero opacity, Sky. It's
I
okay.
usually do not do that. I would usually drop it down here, but I was being lazy and, just trying to do it quick.
You just wanted to watch me twitch. I get it. Yeah. Anyway,
You had that in Final Cut for a while, then they took it away.
I know. I'm old. But the question is processing. Now, playing it is dependent upon, I assume, some GPU of some kind. Outputting it in the old Premiere days, of course, to render something out took forever. So what I guess I'm smelling in your future is that this is all just a kind of the wang of this is all going to live in the cloud eventually, and we're just going to be on an iPad. So all the heavy lifting is done by the CPUs at some big warehouse somewhere in Utah.
Yeah. Well, cloud editing obviously is the future of.
You heard it here first, Chris. You heard it
I
here
feel
first.
like it is, but
I've never heard that before, Sky. Never.
But
Nobody's ever talked about the cloud and editing. You're
there
right.
are drawbacks to cloud editing. So, I mentioned that guy that traveled the world. He would not have been able to do that with cloud editing. So I think you'll never get this kind of smooth scrubbing and, well, not never. I don't want to say never because things happen, but
It's a pretty big word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Many parts of the world have faster internet than the United States.
Yeah.
But not all
So
of the world.
many do.
Let's go to Chris Comfort. Chris, you've had your hand up patiently.
Yeah, I just kind of along the same lines of what we're talking about now, but when using like the Files app, and obviously we can use hard drives connected directly to the iPads now. Are files being streamed from the drives when you do that kind of thing, or do you have to have enough memory on the iPad itself to bring those files over and then work with them in LumaFusion?
Yeah. And this goes for everything on an iPad. The media files have to be local. And at one point they have to get local, but like on Frame.io, on Storyblocks, on Narbox, Western Digital, and any connected network drive, we can view the clips, we can play them, we can mark in, we can mark out, we can do all those decision-making things. The only time we have to transfer something is when we drag it to the timeline.
Interesting. Okay. Mickey says, how has the development of Apple's A series processors impacted LumaFusion's development roadmap? What are some features that you were dying to release in the past that you're now part of LumaFusion due to the advances in the processors?
Well, being the designer of this, not the developer, I would probably say that would be a really good question for Chris Damaris, who happens to be camping this morning. And he said he would come down for this interview. And I said, yeah, you should stay camping. but yeah, so I mean, I think that, I don't have a... This is so much more smooth than any editing system I've used on a desktop that, the processing isn't the limiting factor. The process is the limiting factor is what we can imagine we can do on an iPad and understanding that, with a magic keyboard and the keyboard shortcuts, this thing is like any other editing system, just a bit more fun.
Cool. All right, more questions. Mr. Cochran says, I'm getting behind here. Do most editors using LumaFusion on the iPad use the Apple Pencil?
I would say not, but we do support the Apple Pencil. I'm going to stop screen sharing here for a minute so I can just show you what I have. So, I mean, one thing that we've come up with recently is the keyboard overlay. Let's see if I can get it off here. Sorry, I'm playing my edit accidentally. But this overlay that shows you where all the keyboard shortcuts are for LumaFusion, and you can put it right on your Magic Keyboard or your Smart Keyboard. But one thing that's just like amazing. I mean, I just got my Magic Keyboard the other day, And I was stunned. I was amazed. It took me back. Like, you can scroll with 2 fingers on the timeline. You can use the cursor. You can use the touchpad like a mouse and open windows and stuff. It's like I actually called my whole team and just was like, this is amazing. Now they all want one. I'm like, it's not that amazing. You don't need one. But yeah.
Moving forward, Effin Dunn from Valencia, California. How do you see LumaFusion working on the recently announced iPad Air?
Oh yeah, it'll work great. It works great on the last iPad Air as well. I mean, it's the iPad Air is a great iPad.
Okay, and Mr. Mitchell says, would love to learn lots more. Is there training online? How about having a special LumaFusion training class here on Saturdays? I'm gonna say this, Terry, and I'm curious if my kind of annoying pushing is making you think. I honestly believe that NAB is ridiculous, and you should literally just take your whole NAB budget and put it into a daily online office hours kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
I mean, does it make sense? Do you see the benefit of it?
Oh yeah, and actually, so to answer the first question, Photo Joseph, who you probably know, Joseph Lanaschke, he
Joseph
has
for
been
many years.
making tutorials for LumaFusion for a while. He has 60 tutorials that he will be making, and I think he's somewhere around 25 are done.
Wow.
And it goes through the whole app. So those are little short, under 5-minute tutorials that he's making for us. And I think it would be a great idea to have a training on LumaFusion. Just I love training on it.
See, here's the thing. It doesn't even have to be training. It could just be, let's talk about LumaFusion. And given, especially like in Joseph's studio, he's set up, to the hilt. He can very seamlessly go to the screen, answer questions.
Mhm.
It would
He's
be,
also super busy though.
yeah, but it only has to be an hour a day. You could
Yeah.
say, hey, at this time every day, Joseph is going to talk, going to be training on LumaFusion.
Yeah.
And maybe you got to think about the rest of the world. So maybe you change that hour a couple of times.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I mean, I love Joseph, and I would definitely want him to do that. I think that he's super busy though. I think he would kind of laugh at me and say,
I don't know.
We'll see.
When you start talking about your NAB budget, he might laugh a little less. I'm just saying.
NAB budget is big.
Right. And you're going to I think you're going to reach more people. Anyway, Stephen Kimbrough from Berkeley says, are there any plans to open things up so that developers could add things?
We don't, well, no, there's not.
Bummer. If it wasn't for FX Factory, I wouldn't get a lot of stuff done because it's like, that's what I need.
Well, I mean, there would be, okay, so speaking of effects and plugins, we will be supporting, in that case, we are supporting plans to support video plugins and effects plugins. So that would be a yes. But as far as just, in the regular old app, I want it to trim different or whatever. No, we're not going to do that.
Okay. So Rick Combs from Columbia, Tennessee says, will this play nicely with Premiere? Does your XML work with Premiere?
No. So XML is interesting in that it's very customized for every system it goes to. So we spent, I guess, probably a year, not only doing that, but it was about a year to get our XML working nicely with Final Cut Pro. Now, there are people that have spent time making applications to transfer Final Cut Pro XML to Premiere. So what I would say is get it into the export to Final Cut Pro XML and then use a translator.
So given Apple's history of buying companies and apps, and I have to imagine there's been a few discussions that are you delay it. Does the presence of LumaFusion delay the delivery of Final Cut for the iPad? Is that a safe way to ask that question?
That's a horrible way to think about it, but but I think that
they must be very interested that Your number
know,
has to be on a speed dial somewhere in the infinite loop.
I think that Alex said this a couple weeks ago, that there, you know, a budget for Apple, you know, I mean, the revenue for Apple would be minuscule. For us, it's wonderful, but for them, it's like, do we really want to spend the years it takes for, you know, developers to develop something that is this complex, to get the revenue that Luma-Touch is getting? And the answer would probably be no. We spent, like I said, we spent 3 years, and and both Chris and I have 30 years of history developing for, you know, video editing. So we weren't like two kids in a basement doing it. I don't think Apple's that, you know, I just don't think they're that interested in it.
Okay. Ash Yadav from New York City says, can you talk about using LumaFusion on the upcoming Apple Silicon?
I do not think I can talk about that.
Yeah, there's NDAs that people sign. Hey, Sky, we're gonna try and power. We have a bunch of questions, and let's try and get through a few here. Peter Collins from Vail, Arizona says, how have the Luma UI and Luma users taken advantage of iPad mouse and trackpad support?
Well, I mean, we have had to we did make some changes to make sure those worked well when the trackpad came out, and honestly, it really adds another dimension to editing on LumaFusion. That's, I just found it magical, you know, just to add that back into something I'd forgotten about when I started using LumaFusion.
So along those lines, if you mounted your iPad on the wall, can you use the Magic Keyboard and a mouse and do most things?
Yeah, I would suppose you could. Yeah.
So that would fix my posture
It would fix your neck problem.
I had a lawyer send me a document the other day. He goes, can you fill this out? And I said, not with a pencil. You got to send me a digital version, because I'm not going to do that on paper.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose you could. I'd have to play with that idea, but yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Tony Mobley says, is there an education version of LumaFusion?
Well, we do support the volume purchase for education program that Apple has, and that I believe it gives you 50% on volume purchases for schools.
Out of curiosity, is somebody in the panel managing the questions?
Yeah, that's me helping you
Oh,
out.
okay,
trying
guy.
to
All right,
get some of-
I'm just like kind of freaking out. Thank you for doing that, guy. Stuart Fairweather says, hey Stu, how well does LumaFusion deal with the footage from Filmic Pro?
Well, very well. We are in the, you know, we share a Seattle office with Filmic Pro. So, I mean, we're not in business with them in any way.
Yeah.
It's just a friendly relationship and
A lot
an
of lunch
office, you know,
meetings.
we have coffee. So
John Gerard from Berkeley says, I just got the Insta360 R 360 camera. Is there going to be better support for 360 videos? You did say it supports it.
Yeah, it does support it, and it'll, you know, it'll embed the metadata for 360. What it doesn't have is a 360 viewer inside LumaFusion. So, yeah, it's, you know, it's actually not that requested, but but anybody who has a request and sends it to support at luma-touch.com would get their request into our database, where we look at that every week as a team and decide what to do. So
yeah, it's definitely important to stay as a user, to stay in touch with your developer through those things. I know that the Apple people, they have a whole staff of people that deal with that stuff. Mr. Mitchell says, I know it's crazy to ask, but will LumaFusion support hosting VST plugins for audio someday? Can see some game-changing potential for that. I think you mentioned that, right?
yes, it will someday, and I don't have the date for that, but I know it is on our roadmap. I put it on our roadmap, but I don't think it was on this year, to 2021. I think it was at the end of there, to be honest.
All right. Again, Tony Mobley says, how would LumaFusion work in a classroom full of iPads, elementary or middle school students?
Well, you know, one of the things that we've done with Sam Mestman, and We Make Movies, is provide devices for those students who couldn't get them otherwise. So we've provided several different groups of his with we've donated devices, and as part of COVID, you know, he couldn't go train them in person. So I've been doing occasional online trainings for his groups. And you know what? At least at that age, they look like they're anywhere from 11 to 8, 17 maybe. And they pick up things so quick. And by the end of the little courses, they are making their own videos. And I just see such growth in a matter of weeks in them. So
I'm not familiar with like, say, for example, the Narbox ecosystem, but could you walk in as a teacher with some sort of a wireless drive and allow multiple iPads to log onto it and pull the media off simultaneously? Is that a possibility?
I believe it is, because Narbox provide, it creates a wireless signal that anyone could, with the password connect to get that media. So I think it should be possible.
Does
But
anybody know in the panels, anybody used any of these things? Can multiple people access it at once? Jason?
Yeah, you can. It's highly bandwidth constrained just because of the horsepower of the Narbox. But yeah, if memory serves, I used an early beta version and it was absolutely doable.
Cool. Christian Ortiz from South Florida. Can markers be exported? Note, for use in YouTube timelines.
Oh, that's an interesting request. And no, the markers aren't exported except to, I think we export them to Final Cut. If we export to
I
Final
know that there was a feature, or it was a plugin actually, that Peter Wiggins at fcp.co kind of co-produced with the Lumberjack guys. And they have a way of taking markers and copying and pasting them into YouTube to make, hot points in. I don't know if you saw any of that.
Really great. I think I will definitely put that on our feature.
Yeah, if you go check on fcp.co, there's a whole article about it, and it utilizes the YouTube language of being able to make hotspots that you can click on. Mr. Mitchells once again says, what's the overall processor burden for LumaFusion? As amazing as it is, how much is too much, and what crazy things should we try not to do all at the same time?
Our engine handles between Apple's AV Foundation playback and our engine, we take care of that. So if we can't play back every frame, we'll drop the frame rate on live playback so that we can handle it. There's not much that I would say, that I guess that's one of the fun things about LumaFusion is you can't get hurt in there. So
this is an interesting question, and I think I know the answer. Are you going to port LumaFusion over to the new Macs with Apple designed chips? Isn't that?
We wouldn't really have to port, because when we built LumaFusion, we built it all on the latest code. So our engine is built for iOS and Mac OS. So what we would have to do is design an appropriate interface for Mac. But the bigger question to me is that the mission of our company to compete there, or is it the mission of our company to make the best damn editor in mobile that there can be?
That slips into your backpack.
Yeah.
Okay, and Stuart says, going back to the 709 and HDR, does LumaFusion accept linear color space footage, such as for games and special effects work?
I believe that in the new, I'm just going to check real quick here, but let me just see.
Jason, do you have a comment about this?
I have a comment about the porting. As an Apple developer, I can say straight away, like, first, porting is wrong, and second, don't ask, because we can't talk about it.
Good point. Did you have anything on that color?
Oh yeah, so I am not exactly sure. I mean, what I know is in the new version, like I said, we can do handle HLG, HDR10, and P3 HLG, and Rec 709. But as far as the question goes, I don't know more than that.
Okay. And then the last question, which gets us to the end, Stuart, yeah, we fully understand that you have a certain amount of love for the Apple ecosystem, but what other editors are supported for
Chris,
final
if I can
output?
interrupt, I think we actually answered that with the XML question answer
Okay,
before
yeah, good point.
about doing the transfer that way.
Yep. All right. So done. Sky, you had something you wanted to say. Sorry,
Well-
sorry I cut you off earlier, but
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
we
Very
got we actually had a ton of questions and we got through 'em.
I appreciate your courtesy. No, thank you. As we live in Microsoft land, I understand you are in the Apple universe. And I guess the question would be, there's no future for the Windows-based platform? I'm an Apple guy since '84, so I'm not pushing one way or the
People
other.
still use Windows? Is that still a thing? Is that
Oh,
something that
Chris,
people talk about?
Chris, be nice to the guest.
Yes, Chris, if I can, the
Wow.
the GUI, I love that. I come from Edius as a background, and I look at that GUI for Terry's product, and it is so easy to follow. The same, very similar layout to what Edius was from about 3.5 to 7, and it's very intuitive and very easy to follow. So it's the sort of thing that, while I wouldn't use, I could certainly tell my brother to show his nieces, or show my nieces, and they would absolutely love it because they're already picking up editing at early high school age.
Well, and that's where to eclipse the Ford
Almost
Chevy
too late
wars,
these days.
to eclipse the Ford Chevy wars is to go the Canva model, and that's where the cloud and it's then hardware is ubiquitous. So that's my question.
We're almost done here. Terry, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and sharing.
You're
And
welcome.
I
Thank
hope
you for
this
having me.
has been a good experience. No, you're welcome to come back
It
anytime.
has, and I really, I want to invite you guys to try LumaFusion. I mean, it's, I know Stuart just said he wouldn't use it, but I challenge him to try it for a day and see what he comes out.
Stuart
on
would have to go
Android
borrow
and-
somebody's iPad.
No, I'm on Android and BlackBerry Playbook, so I'm kind of stuck.
Okay, alrighty. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much for having me on, and I hope to visit more often now that I know where to find you.
Yeah, it's
Great
not too
job,
hard,
Terri.
right?
Great job.
You just hopped on and it worked.
The only thing that was hard was getting up that early.
Well, you live in Seattle. I think there's an abundance of coffee available to you. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so Mickey, if you're still here, you can hit it. Oh, look at that. And then I'm going to do this just for fun. Whoops, not that. Hold on. What am I? Oh, yeah, I'm good. So anyway, we have another show coming up tomorrow. It's going to be Friday. That's going to be education. Saturday is a bunch of education. I think there might be something else. Sunday will be easier going. And then next week we'll do the whole same thing all over again. So, oh, I should take this off. That was rude. All right. Have a nice Thursday. I'm not very good at this, but I'll let the music sting out because it's fun to do. Good night, everybody.